Troy Miller is a new friend of the show this year. Wonderful guy who we talked to at the beginning of the year and then talked about the NRB down there in Nashville. We've gotten to know each other. He is the CEO of the NRB. That's the National Religious Broadcasters. He's the president there. And he when we talked, he said, why don't you come to Nashville and see this thing? I said, okay. So we went down there to do the show. I was enamored with the whole presentation. So much so I'm already talking about going back to Dallas, where the convention will be next year already. And Troy joins us again. He just got back from Las Vegas, where there was another huge convention of broadcasters. They gather out there every year for what's called the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. Some of my colleagues, some of my digital team went out there and said that it's just unbelievable. Like football fields of, digital equipment and people kind of talking about the new industry standard. And Troy, I'm glad to have you back. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You bet. What do you learn when you go to these conventions? Because I know there's a subject that's on the minds of a lot of us in radio broadcasting right now, and that's the future specifically of AM radio. Does that come up much when you travel? I know it does at the NRB. How about the NAB out there in Vegas?
Yeah, it was a pretty key topic out at NAB as well. It was a part of Curtis Leggett. He is the CEO and president of the NAB, and his address was specifically to talk about AM radio. And both organizations are working hard to get what's called the AM in the Dash, a bill running through Congress right now, passed.
What's holding that up exactly? Because we've been talking about it for a while. What's the status? Do we know?
Yeah, we're pretty close now to having 60 co-sponsors in the Senate, and that would make the bill filibuster-proof. So we're looking at getting that passed. We really think in the next couple of weeks, Curtis said this, and we believe the same thing with our contacts up on Capitol Hill, that we'll probably pass that threshold here by the middle of May before Congress maybe gets their summer break in and through the Senate. And also Kathy McMorris Rogers, who heads up the Commerce and Energy Committee in the House, has agreed to hold a hearing on this on April 30th. So the bill is moving forward, and we're pretty optimistic that we're going to get it signed and passed in this Congress.
So has it passed out of the House already, or it has not been brought up for a vote in the House yet?
It has not been brought up for a vote in the House yet, but this bill is kind of funny. It's created some strange bedfellows. Kathy McMorris Rogers, who heads up that committee, along with her Democratic counterpart, have both sponsored the bill. So, and the same thing on the Senate side. We have both Democrat and Republican sponsorship. So it's a pretty strong bipartisan support for AM radio in the Dash. We just need to get it through. As you know, the House has been struggling with some foreign aid bills and some other things that are going through. I think as soon as those pass, we'll get some attention on AM radio.
Troy Miller, the president, CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, just got back from the National Association of Broadcasters, so the discussion about AM radio. And I guess, look, I'm a free market guy, and a lot of conservative free market types are listening to this show right now, and they say to you, Troy, I don't know how I feel about government mandating that car manufacturers keep a product in the car. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that normally we're that way as well, but the government also plays a role in making sure there's a fair playing field in the market, in the free market. And this bill isn't just about AM radio in the Dash, as if sort of AM radio was some archaic media that was going by the wayside. AM radio has a huge listenership across this country. It reaches both rural and urban communities. Rural communities, of course, depend on AM radio because this frequency has a much farther reach. It's a clearer signal. The emergency alert system is almost entirely dependent upon AM radio. Anybody who's been out in the Midwest and Tornado Alley or anywhere where there's been any major storms, hurricanes come through, know that, your cell tower functions go down, but AM radio cuts through all that, and that's where you get your information. So the key here was the fact that this was not about sort of free enterprise. This was about winners and losers trying to control what you listen into your car and the ability for people to still get free over-the-air information. And that's what we've explained to Congress, and Congress has stepped up and said, yeah, we get that.
Yeah, it is interesting that there's a bipartisan agreement on that, too. And Troy, the thing about car manufacturers not keeping it in there, do you know why? Have they said exactly what it is that – I mean, some people suggested, it's politics. It's a bunch of people that hate conservatives and conservative radio, which is largely found on AM, and so it's a political thing. To my understanding, it's actually not that. There's been some kind of, I don't know, studies or cost cutting or whatever. Auto manufacturers decided to start pulling this element out for some other manufacturing reason. Is that your understanding?
Well, that was the original, reasons that were given, was that, especially with the new hybrid cars and electric cars, is that there was interference that would be caused in there. And so, this was going to be a sort of burdensome, engineering thing to do. Actually, the Government Accounting Office came back, did a study, and said, that this is a minor shield. It's a $39, $40 part to put in the car. When you look at the total price of a car in the tens of thousands of dollars, that's minuscule to the bottom line for the company. So what it really came down to, and what we talked about at NAB and NRB, is it's what's called the connected car. And this is about who controls the information that comes through your dashboard. And so the new cars, as you know, all have these wonderful displays in them. You can get internet in your car, and the automakers want to be able to control who gets that information, because they want you to subscribe to it, not get it free over the air.
Yeah, that's. I think really that's what drives so much of this, is that subscription-based stuff. Because, quite frankly, satellite radios, in partnership with a lot of auto manufacturers too, there's financial gain there to force drivers to subscribe to audio, which, I know they don't necessarily have to do, but everything, it's just like television, it's going the same way. Everybody wants to subscribe, rather than watch free over-the-air television. So, radio's going through that same battle. So you're optimistic, though, ultimately, Troy Miller, president of the National Religious Broadcasters, that this passes through Congress. That means Biden has to sign it. Indication that he would?
Yeah, I think there is a good indication that he would. A very large portion of the Latin and Spanish community gets their information. Latin is the second or third largest genre on AM radio. And I think, go back to your satellite thing for a minute, that's a key point there, because satellite has never taken off really in the car. It was supposed to come around and really kill terrestrial radio. But the fact that the automakers want to take the satellite didn't do that because people have a choice. They have a choice to either tune into their dial free or get the subscription. What the automakers want to do is take that choice away from you by taking AM out of the car. And that's what this legislation wants to ensure, that you have the choice to have an AM radio still in your car. So you don't have to only get their subscription. You can get the free radio across this country that's been serving people now for over 150 years, and that's the point we're trying to make, that people want to have and deserve to have that choice.
Troy Miller is president of the National Religious Broadcasters, just back from Vegas and the National Association of Broadcasters. It's been great to catch up, Troy. I hope we can do it again very soon. Thanks for your visit today.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.